Hello, everybody. Welcome to my live today. Hope everybody's doing well. We're almost to the weekend. Alrighty, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to talk about F1, which is student visas, and working. Okay, when you can work, when you can't work, what the regulations are and requirements so that you or someone who's going to school on an F1 will not inadvertently violate their status. Then, afterwards, I will cruise through everybody that joined and I will see if there are any questions, immigration questions, that is, and then I will answer them and then we'll call it a day. All right? So you don't have to, if you're going to ask questions, you don't have to repeat it over and over. If I don't get right to it, I will get to it before the end of the live, and then we'll go from there. But try to explain. Sometimes people leave questions that are don't give enough information for me to properly answer. So if you're going to ask a question, try to make it complete as you can, and that way I can answer you in one time. Okay? So let's get to it. So F1 visa means student visa. People come and they go to school and so forth. So I have a lot of times where they want to work, okay, obviously. But one of the requirements of the F1 is that you can show you have sufficient backing, sufficient money, so you won't have to unlawfully work. Just as an aside, they do have sort of an emergency type petition that you can request to work for unanticipated circumstances. So, for example, if your father's the one passing you all the money to go to school and living and food and all that, and he dies and nobody sends you money anymore, that might be a good reason to do it. But it does take quite a significant event to do that. Okay. So when you're going to F1, the general rule is that you're not supposed to work. And what does that mean? I mean, it seems obvious, right? But what really does it mean? It means you don't work under the table, you don't babysit, you don't do tutoring, you don't do any of that stuff because that's unlawful employment. And what happens if you do that? If commit unlawful employment while on an F1? Well, they can terminate your status immediately. They can cut you from the program. And then, of course, you'd have to do an F1 reinstatement. And I can tell you the easiest way to not get an F1 reinstatement approved is to work unlawfully. Okay? It doesn't mean you can't, but they look at that right off the bat. So no matter how good it sounds, don't do it if you're on F1. You need authorization. So what's one area that you're able to easily work while on F1? Well, that's on campus, less than 20 hours a week. Okay, so you're going to work at the library, at the cafeteria, maybe help a professor, do whatever, but only 20 hours a week or less, and only on campus. That doesn't mean you start on campus, then you can take it home. That doesn't mean you can do it remotely. That means on campus. Okay. So what are the times that you're able to work off campus? Well, one is CPT, curricular practical training, where it's actually part of the curriculum, but they have what's called day one CPT, which they don't like. Like the moment you start, you get employment somewhere as part of the curriculum. If they find out, they being immigration, that that's really not part of the curriculum, but is really just a guise for employment, well, then you're going to be terminated, denied, okay? And you're going to get out of status. So the CPT has to really be part of the employment or the curriculum, and it can't be on the very first day that you start. It really shouldn't be. Next is OPT, optional practical training. That's when, depending how long your course is, you get authorization if you apply in time for about a year, and then and then basically you can go to H1B or O1 or whatever it is, depending. Okay, And as long as the employment is related to your degree, and that's a very broad relation, to be honest with you, then that would be okay. Okay, so those are the basic times that you can and can't be employed while on F1. If you have a question, don't do it. Okay? If somebody says, "Oh man, I just want you to do a weekend of, XYZ," don't worry about it. No one's going to know. Well, don't take that chance. It's not worth it. It's not worth it to get $50 under the table to ultimately lose your status, because the immigration will have no problems revoking your status if they find out that you've worked unlawfully. And it's not like, they say, well, you've only worked unlawfully 2 days, so we'll let it slide. No. When you work unlawfully, you are out of status, period. Okay? All right. So let's go back and see if we have any questions. Now's the time to ask questions if you haven't, because when I get to the bottom, that's when I say adios amigos and I go do my other consults. Okay. So let's see. Okay. Okay, I'm just scrolling down. So Funmi Alabi got the #1 gifter badge, which means, Funmi, I bet you're going to ask me a question. But if you're not, it's okay. Okay, here's Ali Saeed. CPT OPT is a work authorization which allows you to work. Yes, it is. It specifically allows you to work. There's always a code in the work permit, okay, as to why you have that authorization. So when you apply for the work permit, let's just say OPT, when you apply, you will get a code on there, and the code will be the section of law that permits work while on an F1, okay? Obviously, like again, it has to be kind of related. So if you're, getting an accounting degree and you get OPT for a year and you go work as a gas station attendant, that's not gonna work, okay? You can't even argue rationally that that's related, okay? Alrighty. Riskle, did I pronounce that right? Why is working so bad? Seems like the U.S. government can collect tax when they would be okay. Well, good question. But the reality is, when you're coming in on a non-immigrant visa, non-immigrant means you're not getting the green card, okay? You're just here for a temporary purpose. Every non-immigrant visa has rules. That's what it is. Like, for example, B2, visitor visa. You come and you visit, okay? You have fun. You say hello. Not allowed to work. Obviously we've been talking about F1, not allowed to work. But let's talk about a different one, like H1B. You're specifically allowed to work, but only to work for the company that petitioned you. E2, specifically allowed to work, but only with the company you started. Okay. So if every type of visa allowed you to work when that wasn't part of the reason for getting it, then it would negate the whole reason for getting it. Okay, let's talk about F1, because that's what this live is about. The purpose of the F1 is to get educated, to get a degree. And people stay here for years and years. They come, they start a community college, and they get a BS, and then a master's, and then a PhD. I've known people who've been on F1 for 14 years. But you can't just go work while on F1, because that violates the purpose and terms of the visa itself. And then a broader policy is that if everybody were to come in and work without authorization, without specific reasonings for, under the visa, then they're going to be taking jobs away from U.S. workers. That's a policy. So when you have a visa that allows you to work, then it either is specifically allowed or you show that it doesn't take workers away from, positions away from U.S. workers. Like, for example, the H-1B, it doesn't matter if there's 1,000 people that are exactly qualified in the U.S. to do the position. If you qualify, you can still get the H-1B. But with, for example, you're applying for PERM, okay, for the green card, the whole first part of the PERM, the whole first part, which takes 6 months, is showing there's no available U.S. workers for the position. Okay, so there's all kinds of rules. That's what it comes down to. Okay? All right. Ali Saeed. Why is schools allowing that? Isn't it illegal day one CPT? Okay. I mean, there are schools and there are entities that skirt the law. Okay, because number one, they want money, from a bunch of students. And number two, they figure if they can run their scheme for enough time and make enough money, then they've made it. And then when you go to prosecute or report, all of a sudden they're gone. Okay, that's why you have to do the research. It's just like people. Not everybody is good. Okay, there's some criminals out there, and they take advantage of people, and they do things they shouldn't do. Okay, so it's the same thing here. And as an aside, if you come in and you find someone who says notary, and then they tell you how easy it is to get a work permit and green card, and all you have to do is sign 22 places in a language you're not familiar with and pay them $5,000, and then all of a sudden you get a you get like a work permit, but then three months later you find yourself in removal proceedings, and then you go back and you say to the notary, why did this happen? But the notary's gone. Okay, so you can see they take advantage of people. Like in some South American countries, notary is synonymous with attorney, and they know that, so they pretend like they're attorneys. So you have to do your homework. So it's not so much why is the school allowing that, is because they're skirting the law, basically. You have to do your homework and make sure that you get to a legitimate school. Okay? Okay. AI. Oh, AI. That's it's saying F1 visa and working. Ask immigration questions. Okay. I've never had an AI come on my thing and say that. Okay. Let's see. All right. Do we have any more questions? Let me just make sure here. Well, hello, Jonathan. Jonathan Rodriguez said hello to me, and I'm saying hello back. Okay. Holly Mom 7. I have 2 dismissed petty theft charges. Can I adjust status for my USC son? I was never arrested. Well, that depends, Holly. First of all, let's take the crimes out of the equation here and see if you qualify anyways, okay, for adjustment. Is your son a U.S. citizen? Well, yeah, because you said USC son. How did you enter the country? Did you enter the country legally or illegally? Okay, and I'd have to ask, how can you have 2 dismissed charges without ever being arrested? That would be very odd. I mean, they would have, in order to bring the charges which you later dismissed, it would be unlikely that in no way whatsoever you were not arrested. Okay, I mean, your interpretation of being arrested and what might have happened are 2 different things. So if it was truly dismissed, and I'd have to determine if that was the case, or was it dismissed because you took a plea deal, okay, or because it was deferred judgment basically, and you did what the judge wanted, okay? In that case, it is a conviction for immigration purposes. So just saying it was dismissed doesn't by itself mean it's not a conviction. And again, when you say you were never arrested, that just doesn't make sense. Okay, unless you supposedly, they think you like went to a store and stole some gum, and they made a complaint, and then all of a sudden you have the court documents, telling you to go to court without ever seeing the police. I mean, I suppose that might be doable or possible, but I would need to see. And then even if they were dismissed, properly dismissed, and even if you don't have a conviction, you still have to be careful how you do the petition. Because if I'm questioning how you were never arrested, I guarantee you immigration's going to question it. And the moment they think you're lying or making misrepresentations, you now will have a fraud charge against you, and now you will be inadmissible because of fraud, and then you may or may not qualify for a waiver. So this has to be done very carefully. So the answer to your question is yes, it's possible, but you have to do it very carefully. You know that even if it was properly dismissed and all that, and even if you weren't arrested, you might say, well, I did steal the gum, but I had a good attorney who got me off. Well, you've just admitted the essential elements of the crime, and under immigration law, that means you're inadmissible based upon the crime. Okay? So I would have an attorney prepared and go to the interview with you, especially in today's day and age. Okay? Alrighty. Let's see if we have any other questions. I have a lot of people who it says invite. Will someone tell me, do you guys want a consultation by me inviting you? Tell me. Okay, just a second. All right. I'm just going through, make sure I didn't miss any questions. Okay, I think I got them all. Let me just go to the bottom and make sure. Alrighty. Well, that's going to do it for today. I hope everybody enjoyed the live. Until the next time, everybody have a good day.